Parshas Bo has three makos. It's the three last makos of the 10 makos. Arbe, Choshech, Makas Bechoros, Bo. Rashi is 2 and 1. That's 3, right? So we have 3 makas. A lot of very interesting things in the parsha. For example, we see that whenever a makkah comes, what Paro does, what Moshe does, what Paro is that he gives Paro an azhara. En onshinen en ken mazirin, nachon? You have to first give a hazara. You have to first give a warning. There are, but it's an interesting thing. Some of them have warnings, some of them don't. Dam, Moshe warns Paro. Tzvadeh, Moshe warns Paro. Kinim, he doesn't warn him. Arav, he warns him. Dever, he warns him. Shchen, he doesn't warn him. I don't know so well.
Like that. It's 2 years.
Yes, exactly. 2 yes, 1 no. Why is it like that? Right. Also, and then it comes up again. So after Shchin, what do we have? Shchin Barad Arbe Choshech doesn't have a Azar. Makis Bechoros does have, right? So you have to first warn. Now, there's an interesting thing. It's an interesting way to understand that, but maybe we can understand it in another way. You know, your body gives you warnings, it sends you signals. Your body, your psyche, you get warnings, and you're supposed to follow the warnings. Many years ago, I was playing soccer with the kids, and I started running. I sprinted, and I hurt my calf. And then I decided not to listen to the warnings of my body, and I kept on playing, and I sprinted again, and I hurt my calf the second time. And then what happened was I had to use crutches. I couldn't even walk anymore. So you can see that there's a warning, you should be listening to the warning. And if you go beyond, then it's very difficult already to repair. There's somebody I work with, it's like couples. Sometimes you have a husband and a wife and they fight a little bit. Now, if they don't listen to each other's warnings, they can end up in a place where they hurt each other so much. It's like the straw that broke the camel's back. You have a camel. How much straw can you put on him? 50 kilos, 100 kilos, 200 kilos, somewhere around there, 200, maybe 300 kilos. I'm not sure how much he can carry, but that's already too much. I know that 2 people on a camel is already heavy for him. Probably before 200 kilos, he caps out. He can't do it anymore. And so the camel, the straw on the camel's back was 199 kilos, 99 grams, and you added 1 more gram. Yeah? Not gram, the 10 grams, right? So the one thing that you added, that's what caused his back to crack. Now what? It's physiotherapy for months. Who knows if you can fix his back at all? Once you've gone too far, it's a problem. I have a client who told me that he was feeling himself going into psychosis. You know what psychosis is? Psychosis. Psychosis is you are out of this world. You're not here. You don't see what other people see. When you're psychotic, there are different types of things that you might see. But let's say sometimes people see other things that aren't in the room. Somebody I know, you would see a demon in the room, and the demon would talk to him every now and again, and nobody else could see him, only he could see him. And it's not like in the movies where they have like their own guide. It's something that really ruins their life and keeps on coming up at upsetting times. Okay, the person is psychotic. And so this kind of mind described that all of a sudden everything they were seeing was started crumping, started kind of mixing in. And they were kind of looking like this, like cross-eyed, and they were detaching from the world. They were feeling going into psychosis. And they stopped themselves and they said, okay, I don't care about the lachatz. I don't care. They were going through a very hard divorce. And so everything, they were losing everything, losing the kids, losing the house, losing everything. And it was very, very difficult for this person. And so what he just said, I don't care about the lachatz. And he managed to step back from becoming psychotic. If he would have crossed that threshold, I don't know if he'd be able to come back. It could be, would have been months of medication, years of medication. It's very, very hard. I have another friend who's a therapist. He's a therapist that his specialty is with soldiers, and he sits with soldiers time after time, day after day. And he sees all the hardest cases, all the people from the 7th of October that are already traumatized. And just now he snapped, said he can't drive anymore. Even to go on a bus is hard for him. Like he can't really leave his house that much. He just doesn't see what other people see. He's stressed, and by him it's different. It's not about stress. It's about um, hearing the secondhand trauma. Secondhand trauma is also terrible. It's also damaging. Don't allow yourselves to be exposed to terrible things. Yeah, you watch scary movies. You have to put a limit on it. They said, right, when the 7th of October, they said then don't look at all these pictures. Don't. It damages your soul. It damages it, and people have been damaged and they can't come back. So there's something we can learn from Einun Shinin and Ken Mazirin. There's a hazara. There's a warning. Your body gets a warning. Your psyche gets a warning. Take these warnings seriously. On the other hand, don't just sit down and say, "Oh, I'm getting warnings. I'm not getting out of bed today because I'm having a warning." Let's not take it to the other extreme. So that's something very important that we can learn from the parsha. Have you ever heard of Icarus? There's a guy called Icarus. Icarus and Daedalus were taken prisoner and they were in a tower in Cyprus, which is not too far from us. And they wanted to get away from prison. So Icarus designed wings out of wax. It's his name. This is Greek mythology. Icarus designed wings out of wax, and he attached them to the back of his son Daedalus. They were both trapped in this jail, in the tower. And he said, fly with them, but be careful, don't fly too close to the sun. And he was enjoying flying. The wings worked very nicely, the wax wings, and he flew down to the sea and he flew up. But he wanted to go higher. And he wanted to go higher. And he wanted to go higher. And he saw the wings, the tips of the wings were already melting. But I want to go higher. But I want to. No, you listen to warnings. They're warnings. If the edges of your wax wings are already melting, don't go closer to the sun. What happens is he went closer to the sun, they melted, and then he fell and died. That's how the story goes. So we're going to be cautious and careful about these things. That's something we can learn from each one of these markers.
I think the reason
Wax
that
burns quicker. Wax, think about it. If it's a hot day, wax is like chocolate. Put wax or chocolate outside when it's hot. Yeah, so fine. That they got that wrong. Yes.
I also think that the reason you don't get like a third warning, like for the shir makkah,
Yeah.
is like you didn't learn the first time, you didn't learn the second
Yeah.
time, you're not gonna learn, so just give you another
Yeah,
one.
we're not gonna learn the third time. But okay, so what I think is like this: why one makkah, second makkah, one makkah, yes, second makkah, yes, third makkah, no. Well, what it's teaching us also is when the body gives you warnings. Also, a lot of times you don't get that last warning. You think you'll get it. I see this at the gym a lot. I go to the gym and I do a squat and I put on weight and more weight and it feels okay. And I do more weight And sometimes you miss that last warning. You don't get the third warning sometimes, and then you cause damage. So yeah, it's very hard to gauge. If you're going close to danger, close to failure, then you're my age. So it's very hard to get that. Now there's an interesting thing I saw. Makas Choshech, right? So Choshech, it was darkness. It was so dark, it was a heavy darkness. You couldn't move. Just imagine you're reaching for something. You're stuck like this for 3 days. It's a heavy darkness. You can't see anything. You're stuck in the same place. Some people, when they describe depression, they're in a depression, they feel like this. They feel like sinking mud. I have clients describe the depression. It's like a dark wave. It's like a heavy wave and it holds you down and you can't really do too much with it, right? So that's it's an interesting thing to think about that comparison, being held down and not being able to do what you want to do. The stuff you want to do, you want to get out there, you want to do stuff, and you have this depression putting you down. Does anybody here know about Mount Rushmore? There's a oh, okay. There's Mount Rushmore is the mountain in America that has the president's heads on them.
Yeah.
So we have on that you have Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt is the last president over here. He became president in 1904 before World War One. All the other ones were much earlier. And he's considered one of the best presidents in the United States. He became president at the age of 42. He's the youngest president to ever be president. The oldest person to be president is Trump, or is going to be Trump. Now, at the age of 25, Teddy Roosevelt, he had a baby girl. He was happy, but then his wife had issues. She had to go back to the hospital. She had to be hospitalized. His mother got sick, and his mother died, and then his wife died, and he kept a diary, and he writes one line in that diary that day: "The light has gone out of my life." At the age of 25, he was very successful. He was a very successful politician. He was a member of the New York State Assembly. He was like a rising rock star. Like people could see he had a lot of power. But then this terrible day comes to him. He loses his wife. He loses his mother at the same day. He couldn't deal with it. It's kind of yeah, it's something heavy that's coming over him. So he gave his newborn daughter to his sister to take care of, and he went out to North Dakota to sit on a farm and to take care of cows. He became like a cowboy for 2 years. That was his self-therapy that he did for himself. And then he comes back and then he becomes president. Um, he was president for more than one term. The first time he was president was just because McKinley was killed, assassinated, and so. But then he becomes president for one term, which did so much in America. And he writes, "I never would have been president if it hadn't been for my experience in North Dakota." So you can see how he dealt with that kind of the darkness that came over him. By the way, Winston Churchill also describes being very depressed, and so does Abraham Lincoln. And these people are super, super successful. So, even though you're in that darkness, you're in that heaviness, there's still people that do so much, that manage so much. And for many of us, the depression is kind of the going down so that you can go back up. We can't always have ups in our lives. An up always has a down. And so if you know how to relate to that in the right way, you can make the down lead you to an up afterwards. So the parsha starts off with Bo Paro. And just before Shmuel's bar mitzvah, he's turning 13. And he says to me, a simple question. I said, let's try and work out a question over here. We were writing his bar mitzvah drasha together. And he says, why does it say Bo Paro, come to Paro? Why doesn't it say Lech? When Hashem says to Moshe, go to Eretz Yisrael, it doesn't say Bo Eretz Yisrael. He says, Lech Lecha. So why doesn't Hashem say to Moshe, Lech el Pare?
Say bones together.
Ah, very good. It's been years and you still answer the same question, right? Back then. So when you say Bo, it's like come together. Come with me to go to Paro, which is a very nice explanation. Shmuel answered back then that Moshe, where's he from? Where did he grow up? Where's his childhood from? Paro's palace. So Hashem says to him, come to your child household, the household you grew up in. Come, because this is where you're from, in a way. So the Moshe goes to Paro and he tells him about the eighth Makkah, Makkah's Arbe. Makkah's Arbe is locusts. Locusts that'll cover the sky, that'll eat everything. You still have plagues like that today that happen. Every few years, you have kind of cycles. There's interesting locusts that they researched. They're locusts that they find in the area of Washington, D.C. in America. And they find that they have 17-year cycles. Every 17 years, all of a sudden they hatch and they eat a lot of stuff. So you have these cycles of locusts, but everything in Egypt wasn't natural. It was all so extreme. Blood, the whole river full of blood. Frogs, so many frogs, right? It's just not ending. And so that's a very interesting pasuk that Hashem says. There's going to be arbe v'chisat ein haaretz. It's going to cover the eye of the earth. And if you look at Unkelus, yes, it means you won't have sun. Yes, but it's interesting that we see the eye. It's an interesting kind of way of expressing it. The eye of the earth. It means whatever you see, whatever I see, I can, right? In a way, everything around me, this whole lounge and the room that we enter and the kitchen, I'm kind of holding all of this with my eye. That's how the eye is very, very powerful in a way. You know, the same thing of what else do we call an ayin? An ayin is also a spring, because a spring keeps on bringing out water. It's an idea of like never ending in a way, and the eye is also never ending. I can look over here, I can go outside, I can look over there. I can capture so much with my eye. It's kind of a never ending thing, and a spring also is kind of a never ending thing. I want to tell you a story about Alexander the Great. So it's the Gemara and Maseches Tamid. The shortest Masechet in the Shas. Maseches Tamid just has 7 pages. And here you have a whole Amud with the story of Alexander the Great that conquered Eretz Yisrael. And he asked the Zkanim of Eretz Yisrael, the Zkanim of the Negev, Ziknei HaNegev it says, what's further, east or west? What should a person do in order to live or in order to die? He asked a lot of kind of philosophical questions, and he really liked the answers. And then he comes and he puts on argaman clothes. Okay, he puts argaman clothes on them and a golden necklace. And then he says to them, okay, listen, I've conquered Eretz Yisrael. Now, um, I want to go to Medinas Hayam. I want to go beyond the sea. They tell him, you cannot go too far south from here because you're going to get to Harei HaChoshech, the mountains of darkness. You cannot cross the mountains of darkness unless you have white donkeys. White donkeys can cross the mountains of darkness. This is all secrets. Yes. The Gemara says it's very, the Gemara speaks about white mules, actually. White mules are dangerous. You have a horse and a donkey that have a baby, you call it a mule. White mules are considered dangerous. They're for very, very rich people, but you shouldn't own them because they're dangerous. I don't know why they're dangerous. Oh, if they bite too much, they bite too hard, they bite to the bone, something like that. Um, there's a story about Reb Pinchas Ben Yair that went to see his son-in-law, which was Rabbeinu HaKodesh, Rabbi the Hanasi. I say the story in Beit Sharim when I get there. Beit Sharim is in the north of the country. You can go see Rabbi the Hanasi's house. And I stand at the entrance to his house and I tell the story. You can see in the entrance to his house that he had a place for animals to be. There's like an area where there's like a trough area. It's kind of a long area. We could have a few white mules in a row. And Rabbi Pinchas Ben Yair comes to see Rabbeinu HaKodesh, Rabbi Nasi, and he comes to the front door and he says, hey, you have Pradas Levanos. Chazal said, the rabbi said, you're not allowed to own them. I'm not going to go into your house because you have an usher animal in your house. So Rabbi said, no, I'll sell them. He said, you sell them. You're going to cause somebody else to have problems. He says, no, I'll kill them. He said, you kill them, and they couldn't work out the issues. And the Gemara says that then a chasm grew between them, a valley grew between them. And it doesn't mean that all of a sudden they were standing like this, and then a valley grew between them like the table here, and they can't get to each other. It means that there's a valley between them because they couldn't see eye to eye anymore. And they came to the conclusion that we can't talk to each other, we can't understand each other, not always can you communicate with somebody, not always can you get to an understanding at the end of the day. Sometimes, things just stay like that. And there's people that we know, families that have been ripped apart and they try to come back. A woman called me up. She said, I haven't spoken to my parents in 10 years. And I've had a few kids since then. I wanted to see if I can speak to them again. So there was a valley between them. There was a chasm between them. And now she wants to fix it. Once she wants to do it, it worked. And we managed to get them to talk to each other. In any event, so here when we mention the white donkeys, right? Alexander the Great, he wants to get to the mountains of darkness. He cannot cross them without white donkeys. Now, darkness represents also galus. We spoke about darkness before, right? Makas Choshech. And here we're speaking about a certain darkness. I want to connect this to the parsha in a different way, into the idea of the eye, which we'll see later on. But so far in the story, Alexander the Great wants to cross these mountains of darkness. Darkness is like galus. What is the solution for galus? What's going to bring us redemption? Who's going to bring us geula? Mashiach. And what's Mashiach going to be coming on? A white donkey. So the white donkeys have a bechina of geula in them.
What, mule or white donkey?
It says white donkey. My connection to the mules seems very good. They're not allowed to have a mule. The mules seem not connected. At the beginning, I thought it was kind of it's not connected at all. The idea of the mule. It has horse in them. Why not? Because we're talking about pure donkeys. We're not talking about a donkey with horse inside him.
Yeah, tell me on a donkey and what about a horse?
No, a donkey.
On a bee. Was coming on a chariot. So.
Okay. So Alexander the Great crosses the mountains of darkness with white mules. Well, sorry, with white donkeys. And then he gets to a city which is all women. There are no men, all women. And this is actually interesting. In the time in the time of the Greeks, there were women fighters that are called Amazon fighters. The Amazon are women warriors. And when the first explorers got to the jungles by Brazil, to the Amazon forest, they encountered full tribes of fighting women, and they called them Amazon. And then the jungle became known as the Amazon jungle. So it all starts from women warriors. And so Alexander the Great gets to a city of all women, and he says, okay, I'm going to conquer the city. And they said, don't conquer us, don't fight us. You're in a lose-lose situation. If you win, they're going to say, who did you beat? Women. It's a big thing. But if you lose, it'll be worse. They lost to women. So you can't win this. He said, you're right. Okay. And he said, fine, I'm not going to conquer you. I'm not going to kill you. Let's call it a day. I'm hungry. Bring me food. And he sat down in the palace of this women's city, and he says, bring me bread. And they brought him bread, and he held the bread and fell down. He's like, what? It was a solid piece of gold. He said, why did you give me bread of gold? They said, well, you come from a place that has food. If you came here, you must have been coming for a reason. Maybe you must have come for gold. And that kind of, what they're doing is they're causing him to think about himself, to have insight. Well, a lot of times we do things, we don't know why we do things. Why is Alexander the Great conquering everything? Right? He's the first great conqueror, one of the first great conquerors. And he sweeps through all of Greece and Macedonia, and he goes beyond through Turkey, Israel, Egypt. Then he sweeps out all of Persia, and he gets all the way to India. Why is he conquering so much? He himself may not even know. At a certain point, you don't even know why you're doing stuff. And this question and giving him the loaf of golden bread makes him think, why actually am I doing what I'm doing? And then he kept on after this women's city, and he got thirsty. And he dug himself down into the ground to look for water, and he found water, and he had fish with him that he had fished, and he wanted to clean the fish off with this water, and he threw the water over the fish, and the fish smelled amazing. Fish usually don't have such a nice smell, but after you washed them in this water, they smelled amazing. So he knew the water must have been coming from paradise. This is not regular water. This is water from Gan Eden. So he dug deeper, and he got to a gate to Gan Eden. And he says, I want to walk through. He tried to walk through. He saw it was closed. The gate was closed. So he banged on the door, and he said, let me in. And they said, Zeh Ashar LaHashem Tzaddikim Yavovoy. You're not a tzaddik. How many people did he kill? What did he do? He did a lot of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great that conquered most of the world. Alexander Mokdon. Alexander the Great conquered the land of Israel in the year 333 BCE. 2,300 plus years ago. He had nice blonde hair. There's a lot of statues of him, pictures of him. 2,300 years ago. He was Greek. And they said, Alexander, you cannot come through because you're not a tzaddik. He said, fine, at least throw me something. That I thought was an interesting thing. A lot of times you get to a place you get stuck. He didn't get stuck. He said, fine, I can't go through, throw me something. So they threw him something. They threw a skull. And the skull was heavy. And he put it on and he wanted to weigh how much the skull weighs. By the way, let's not just look at the story as such a simple story. There's depth behind the story. There's depth. There's stuff beyond. And Alexander the Great takes the skull, puts it, and it weighs a lot. And he puts on the other side, he puts 10 kilos. He's putting on 50 kilo weights. And it's 200 kilos, 500 kilos, and the skull is still heavier. And he's like, I don't understand how this is so heavy. So then he took dirt and he put it over the eyes of the skull, and then it didn't weigh anything anymore. And he told this to the rabbis, Ziknei HaNegev, and they told him, there's a pasuk in Mishlei that says, She'ol va'avado lo tisbana ve'inei ha'adam lo tisbana. Hell doesn't quench its thirst. It can't get full. Gehenna keeps on eating. And so does a person's eye. The lo saver, as much as you see. I can see, because I can see this whole room and I can absorb all of it. And I can go outside and I can absorb everything outside, right? It doesn't have an ending. And the eye, as long as it can see, it doesn't have an ending. It's always going to be heavier than other things in a spiritual way. And to connect back to the parsha, v'chisat ein haaretz. The eye, it's going to cover everything. So there's some interesting ideas about, interesting kind of comparisons over there. You know how long the Makkahs took? The 10 Makkahs took how long?
It took a month, something, a week.
A whole year, 12 months. There's a Mishnah. There's a Mishnah in Eidos that says, Mishpat HaMitzrim, 12 chodesh. Mishpat Rashaim b'Gehenom, 12 chodesh. Right? The wicked in Gehenom is 12 months. That's why when you say Kaddish on somebody that's nifter, you only say 11 months. Because if you only a Rasha spends 12 months in Gehenom. So when a person says Kaddish, then you just have a friend that their parents were nifter. So the brother that says Kaddish, then it's going to say Kaddish for 11 months. And there's a few other things that are 12 months. What? Because 12 means that he's a Rasha. And we don't want to say that anybody's a Rasha. So we only say 11 months.
What if they're actually?
It's a very good question. Even if we think that actually we don't want to say 12 months. You never want to do 12 months. Mishpat Dor Hamabel was also 12 months, right? Noach's Teva, that's also talking about 12 months. Eov is also 12 months. It's a question how you understand the 12 months by Noach. 120 days. It says he built it for 120 years, but the Mabul itself was only 120 days. But you have to work it out. It's 120 days that there was a Mabul. There's 120 days that nothing happened, that it just stayed, the water just stayed. Then it was 120 days till it kind of went down. You're going to end up with 12 months like that. So the Mabul, from when the first raindrop dropped till when Noach could go out of the Teva and settle the land, you're talking about 12 months. Gog and Magog will also be 12 months. Now, we have some interesting things in the parsha about, there's a dog that's mentioned in the parsha. A dog did not bark when we left Mitzrayim. What do we know about dogs in Chazal? You know that Beit HaMikdash Harishon had a fire, right? The fire that we can see on top of the Mizbeach. And Beit HaMikdash Harishon, when it came down looking like a lion. And by Shein, it came down looking like a dog. So a dog is considered the end of the spectrum of animals, the lowest of the animals. Okay, it says that Az shebachayot kelev. A dog, right? You've had dogs bark at you, right? They have azut. So he's very low down in certain ways. But then in interesting other ways, we refer to the dog in a positive way. We actually want to feed dogs because dogs were good to us when we left Mitzrayim. They didn't bark at us. So there is kind of a minig to, yes, there's a lot of good things said about the dog. You know, Kalba Savua, right? Kalba, why is he called Kalba Savua? Kalba Savua is Rabbi Akiva's father-in-law. Why is he called Kalba Savua? Because you would come into him hungry like a dog, and you would leave full. So that's why it's Kalba Savua. You start Kalba, you end up Savua. Savua. There's one of the Sifra Achronim, you get who? The Rama Mipano says that Kalba Savua is a Gilgul of Kalev ben Yefuneh. Kalev ben Yefuneh, that was in the Midbar, it's one of the 12 spies. Kalev ben Yefuneh was a spy. He was one of the 12 Meraglim. Kalev ben Yefuneh was rebelled against the other 10 spies. He was a Mored. And who did he end up marrying? Kalev ben Yefuneh married Batya. Batya, Bat Paro. Why is she miskena? She was old. Was she old? I don't think so. How old was she when she found Moshe? She must be older than Moshe. Right. You're right. So Kalev ben Yefuneh came into Eretz Yisrael, right? When he was coming into Eretz Yisrael, Batya was already 120 years old, at least. No, more like 140 years old, right? And he's coming into Eretz Yisrael. He was a Meragel for a second time. And he had a wife who's 140 years old. So all these things, we don't want to look at them as literally as if you were there at the same time. I don't know if you would see this. The idea is that it's giving you deeper stuff to think about. So Chazal say Yavo ben shel Yavo mored v'yitchaten im moredet. Batya went against the whole family and she took a son out of the Nile and she raised him. It's a moredet. Kalev was mored with the Meraglim, so they're matim for each other. Kalev and Kelev, by the way, Kelev is also a mored. The Kelev is Az Shebachayot. Right? He's the most chatzuf Shebachayot. And it says that when Mashiach comes, then we're gonna have Pnei Ador ke Pnei Kelev. The generation is gonna look like a dog. We're gonna be chatzufim. And you can see that happening today. People are chatzufim.
No.
And I think with this point, we're going to end today's shiur. Pnei Ador ke Pnei Kelev. And here Ratzon Mashiach is going to come soon.